Hey everybody, how you doing today? I hope you're having an okay day. I hope you had an okay week. I wanted to take some time to talk about moments in the Bible where people were stuck in isolation, what that meant for them and what that means for us. So it was approximately 40 days ago that we got the order to not go to work and not go to school. And that number is really important because throughout the Bible, 40 is a number that gets used a lot for people who are, in a sense, socially distancing themselves from everybody else. I want to talk about just 2 or 3 of those today and try to gain something that can help us get through this. First, one of the first stories of people being set adrift into a world that they do not understand is in the story of Noah, a guy who understood that something was going to happen, who was told that something was going to happen, who prepped, who made stuff, who did everything he was supposed to do for the disaster that was about to happen. And then the disaster happened, and you had 40 days of raging storms that flooded the world, and he and his family were stuck inside a big floating box with tons of animals and probably no clue about how it was really, truly, specifically going to end. I don't think I can get my head around the idea of not just being stuck in my house for 40 days, I'm getting used to that, but to feel the toss and to not have a full equilibrium, literally, for over a month, as you're surrounded by animals and just your family. You've got a food store, but you're not sure how long will that really last. And we don't know that Noah knew that it was only going to be 40 days of rain. And then, of course, after that, he had to wait for the water to go away. So this guy was stuck there for a long, long, long time. He sends out birds to find anything, some kind of sign about when will this end. In the first couple of times, he gets no response at all. Now, ultimately, of course, we know that Noah makes it, survives, the ark hits land, they're released, humanity and life on earth continues, everything is great. But I think it's important to remember, even though Genesis doesn't give us a lot of sense of what Noah was really thinking during that time, that it is a moment where his faith was there, he was prepared for it. But even in that moment, when we are tossed around by a storm for over a month, it had to be confusing, it had to be frustrating, and it had to be scary. And he was eager to send out the birds to find out, is this going to end anytime at all? Anytime soon? Another story, New Testament. Jesus is baptized. He afterwards walks out into the wilderness away from people and spends 40 days in isolation. That story gives us a sense of what, maybe a better sense than the story of Noah, of what some of us are dealing with right now. Jesus goes into the wilderness for 40 days. And during that time, he is severely and dramatically tempted by the devil. The Bible gives us 3 different accounts on how Jesus is tempted. First, Satan tells Jesus, hey, you're hungry. You've been out here for a while. So if you're God, turn those rocks into bread. After that, he takes him to a place way up high and basically says, jump to your death, but don't worry, I'm sure you'll be okay because you will be saved from injuring your feet because you're God, right? And then finally, he tells Jesus, I'll give you everything you want, everything you need. You just need to bow down and worship me. I remember hearing growing up that Jesus was tempted in the same ways that we are tempted. And I remember thinking that that seemed insane. Because I've never been told to turn rocks into bread. And I've never been told to jump off some high place where I would certainly break my legs or die. And I've never had a direct moment where someone's like, you can have everything you want, just, worship the devil. But when we look more at this story, we get a sense of the types of things that really bother us as people. if we break down these three temptations that Christ dealt with, we can see something more human and something more real. First, Jesus' first temptation is to make sure he has enough food. So when this whole lockdown thing happened, I remember going to the store on the same day that we were told, hey, we won't be coming to school next week. And it was the most crowded grocery store I've been in years. And stuff was just flying off the shelves. There was no more bread, no more pasta. All the canned goods were just gone. The freezer section completely cleared out. Even the fresh produce was really drastically just gone. It's like I could eat, I don't know, a thing of asparagus, and that was about it. So the concern of food is very real. And at this point now, 40 days into coronavirus, that concern has lessened some. I can go to the store now and stuff is being restocked and we're ready to go. But when we are in isolation, we worry about where we will get our next meal. We worry about what's going to happen next. And so what we see with Jesus is that first temptation is one about just, what are you going to eat? You're God. Use your power. More on that in a minute. The second temptation is about safety. And is there anything that we're less concerned about right now or more concerned about? Nope. Is there anything that we're more concerned? There's all sorts of stuff we're less concerned about. I said that wrong. Is there anything we're more concerned about than safety? Because that's what this whole thing is about. Our current moment is we are all stuck at home because we want to make sure we are safe and the people we love are safe. We're doing everything we can to make sure that people don't die when they don't need to die. And we're doing the best we can, and people are still dying. We're approaching 50,000 deaths in the United States from COVID-19. And that's with people staying home for the last month. Safety is a real concern. So for this moment in the story of Jesus that he's being told, go ahead and take the risk. Just jump. What have you got to lose? Jesus doesn't do it because he tells Satan, we don't tempt God. We don't challenge God for our own what? Our own sense of rightness, our own sense of power, our own sense of freedom. We have to be like Jesus and understand that just because someone says that you will probably be okay or you will be okay, this is an issue of safety. The third temptation is one that I think is most fascinating because Jesus is told, you know what? You've been out in the desert for 40 days. You're struggling. You're having a hard time. And Satan brings to Jesus the entire point of his life. I'll give you the entire world. I'll give you everything that you could possibly want. All you need to do is worship me. I think this is fascinating for two reasons. The first is that it's ultimately about identity. You can serve your mission. You can accomplish what you want to accomplish, but who are you if you do it in this way? And the second point that I think is interesting here is it's about compromise. How much are we willing to compromise to get what we want, to get what we need? How much more hard work do we want to cut out of our lives to get what we want now? We're stuck in a weird time right now because some of us don't have the secure lines to food that we used to have. And some of us don't feel safe because we still have to go to work and interact with people. Or we know that if we don't go to work, that we don't have the money to keep the house, to keep the food, to pay the bills. And I know there are people right now who are probably compromising their integrity, who are compromising who they thought they were to make sure they can do things that they need. These are real temptations. These are real struggles. And we're all dealing with them. So I want to finish today by talking a little bit about what should we be doing then, right now. Like the story of Jesus, we have an interesting parallel in that Jesus went into the wilderness right after a baptism, which today when we think about someone being baptized, it's this amazing, glorious high point. But then in this story, it's followed immediately by isolation and temptation and struggle. And I think that's one of the most relevant and real feelings right now for so many people, that in the spring of 2020, we had things planned. We had graduations, we had vacations, we had weddings, we have so many parts of our lives that we were looking forward to that were definitely going to be the best part of our year. And in some cases, they were going to be the best part of our lives, and now they don't happen. Now it didn't go according to plan. And I want to take a second to address an idea that I think is really important, because I know some people at this time, they're frustrated and they're struggling, and they've probably got some other people in their lives saying, you know what? I know you're upset, but hey, we've got more than a lot of other people do. I remember seeing early on the internet, someone posted like, hey, Anne Frank had to live in an attic for over 2 years. You're being asked to stay home and watch Netflix for a month. Get some perspective. Of course, I think gratitude is important. Yes, I am grateful for everything I have. I still have my job. I still have my house. I still have my family. I am grateful for those things. But I would worry that some people are getting a message that their feelings aren't relevant and that their feelings aren't worth their time, and they are. Like I said, some of us are losing the highlights of our lives right now, or that plan is all being thrown out the window right now. And it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to be angry. Those are real emotions, and you're allowed to have real emotions because you're a real person. Do you still have more than a lot of other people in the world? Of course. But for you, the person, this moment is still real. And because that moment is real, you could be experiencing all sorts of stuff right now. You are having your own temptations. You are fighting your own demons. You are having your own anxiety and your own depression and your own moments where you're trying to figure out what you should and shouldn't compromise. You're having your own struggle with your identity right now, because who am I if I'm not interacting with my friends and not going to my places and doing my normal things? All of these temptations are very real right now. And so to end on a sense of hope, I want to talk about the end of this story of Jesus, because at the end of this story, first, everything that Satan throws at Jesus, Jesus is able to combat with messages from Scripture. Man doesn't live by bread alone, but by the Word of God. And so at this time, when we're struggling, it's really important to think about, what are the words we're hanging on to? What are the messages we're hanging on to? Who are we listening to? Who are we letting into our heads, and what are we letting them tell us? Are they the ones who are encouraging us to get more and more frustrated and angry? Are they the ones that are telling us it's going to be okay? Are they the messages that say, you're not as worthy as you thought you were now that you don't have your friends and your activities and all this other stuff? We have to be careful with the messages, because the messages and the words are what gave Jesus strength, and they are what can give us strength if we are choosing wisely. There's a lot of stuff going around right now. A lot of people saying a lot of things. We need to be discerning. We need to ask questions. We need to be curious about what's happening. But the other thing that's really important right now is to understand the end of this story. Jesus first resisted the temptations through words and messages and a connection with God. And at the end of the story, Jesus is ministered to by angels. I think that's so important. When I talk with my therapist, one of the things that we talk about a lot is when I'm feeling anxious and stressed and frustrated and one of the things that we often come up with is, everything is okay because they're going to be okay. And this was a message that was very hard for me to understand for a long time, and it was a very hard one for me to accept for a long time. But this concept of things are already okay because they're going to be okay, this will end. This is momentary. And that doesn't mean you get to reclaim everything that we've lost. But it doesn't mean that this is going to be the way things are forever. Jesus makes it through his 40 days in the wilderness, and he is ministered to by angels. In his time of need, he is brought beings that give him what he needs. So to end today, I want to ask and encourage you to think about what is it that you need right now? What are your struggles and your frustrations? And how can you let people know what those are? I'm not an angel, but I want to be someone who can minister to other people in need. And I know I'm not the only one. So at this time, while we are still stuck and we are still struggling and we are still fearful about what's going to happen and wondering where our next meal comes from and where our safety is and who we are as people, reach out, find people, and let them know how you're feeling. Let them be God's messenger. Let them be God's minister to you, to help you in whatever way you need. Because that's what we're all supposed to be as Christians. We are the extensions of the divine, here to serve, here to help, and here to heal.